Hi, everyone. Samantha here. Welcome to our third episode of Trans IRL. And we were only 3 minutes late tonight. That's so much better than we did the last time. It's been our intent since the start of this project to look at many aspects of the trans community from many different angles. Although our episodes looking inward at issues within the trans community are very important, it's just as important for us to look outward. And that includes speaking with those individuals in the community that use their visibility to help share our experiences with the rest of the world. So tonight's guest, I'm very excited to introduce you to him, fits that category very well. And I can't wait to share his story with you and some of his art. But first, a quick reminder that our previous live episodes are still available to watch in replay mode online. You can check them out on our page here. Check out my conversation with Izzy and Paula. Both episodes were really fantastic conversations, lots of great questions asked of all of us there. So please take the time to check those episodes out. And if you haven't yet, please subscribe to our channel. Our subscriber count lets us know that people are actually interested in the work we're doing here. And we're always very interested to know that people are watching. Another side note there, I noticed today that our Instagram channel was within like 2 or 3 followers of hitting 1,000 followers, which is fantastic in just 3 weeks to get to that number. So that's exciting. But if you look at those numbers compared to our subscriber count, less than half the people that follow us on Instagram actually subscribe to us on YouTube. So please don't forget to subscribe, and then you'll get great notifications when we're about to go live as well. Behind the scenes tonight, as always, is my wonderful director, Addison, who did a fantastic job of throwing me under the bus last week. Hi, Addison.
Yeah, so for people who weren't watching last week, what happened was I may have played a clip of Samantha 5 months in on HRT before her vocal surgery, and it was for the show, and what I didn't know was that Samantha didn't want me to play the whole thing, and she didn't want me to play...
Yeah, the idea was just to get the audio clip in there, not the...
And just the audio,
the full
too.
raw video, yeah.
Yeah, and so that led to this exchange last week.
Addison, thank you so much for putting that entire clip of me 5 months into HRT with no makeup on in a hotel room in Seoul, South Korea.
About that, but...
Yeah, I really appreciate that one. That was awesome.
Now, it was an honest mistake, but I still feel bad, so I want to make things right tonight. Samantha, I hope you're ready, because I'm going to share some embarrassing photos of myself. I didn't have to spend that much time looking for them. These are all from the past week. So without further ado, this photo is from before my electrolysis session this week. That's a nice little lidocaine beard, and don't know why I took that picture. I don't know why I took 4 different takes of this, but I did, and that was, believe it or not, the best one. If you think that's bad, check out this. This might be the dumbest thing that I own. This is an ice pack face mask from after electrolysis. Samantha, you can totally make this the image that comes up when I call you on your phone. I'm okay with that.
That would be amazing. Maybe that should be your profile picture on Instagram too.
I don't think so,
No?
Maybe not that far.
All right, so I guess we'll call it even up now. All right.
I hope we can, yes.
All right.
All right, well,
so
back to you.
So tonight, Addison, thanks. Addison will be watching our live chat tonight, and she'll be consolidating any questions that our viewers might have for either me or for our guest. So make sure that you're adding those to the chat window, and we'll get to those before the end of the show tonight. So with all that said, on to tonight's guest. He's an accomplished artist, designer, and muralist. His works feature trans and gender non-conforming individuals, and he was actually recently featured on Netflix in a special that was a joint production between Netflix and GLAAD to bring his art to their First Time I Saw Me project there, which is fantastic. So with that, I would like to introduce Rae Senarighi. Did I get it right? I messed it up, didn't I? Here we go. I'm sorry, Rae. How are you tonight?
I'm doing really well, and I'm happy to be here.
It's nice to finally see you face to face here. And This is such a great tool to do just that. As part of my preparation for our talk tonight, I took the liberty of going through your showcase on your website there and just looking at some of the art that you've done over the years. And I'm just amazed at the work that you've done here, the detail that you're able to convey, and the colors that you use. The work you did on your Transcend series is truly incredible. I'm in awe of your work. I'm kind of fangirling a little bit right now. So I'm
Thank you.
Definitely inspired by the works that you've put out there. I think it's really, really amazing.
Thank you so much. I feel like I have been searching my whole life for something to do something with my art. And I feel like I found that thing. So that's awesome to hear that people are resonating with it,
Definitely. So we kind of touched on where you're at now, right? You've just had this great traveling show, Transcend. You're still traveling with it this year, actually. So we'll talk about that a little bit later on. You've done these collaborations with Netflix and GLAAD. That's the now, but there's a lot of your story that happened before then that got you to where you are at this point in your life. And I really want to go through some of that and share your journey with our viewing audience out there, because I think it's important to talk about how do we develop our identities, and then how do we come to express those identities. So to kick things off here, just kind of a general, let's start at the beginning. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Missoula, Montana, and my mom was actually an artist, so I learned a lot from her as a young kid, and passed away when I was little, but I got to learn a lot from her and like register a love for art from a very early age.
So it sounds like you were into art then from that younger age there. How did you first get into it? Was it drawing? What type of media did you begin with at that point?
Boy, I think I used a lot of, colored pencils and owls growing up. My parents put me in a couple of private art classes when they could, and a lot of soft pastel and oil pastels, and kept with colored pencils all the way through high school, and then dabbled with paint once I got to college.
All right. So when you went to college, then you were already in alignment to go into an arts type program?
Yeah, my college experience was a long one. I started going to school when I was like 19, and I actually got an F class because I didn't show up to class enough. So I decided at that point that I wasn't quite ready to be in school, and I stopped going to class and ended up going back to school, to a different school, for a Bachelor of Fine Art Design. Got really focused on my commercial art career for a while, and didn't become painting until about 3.5 years ago.
What were you doing in commercial arts?
Well, I am a scientific illustrator and have been for about 10 years. I really like it. It's really interesting. I'm always learning new things, and I think it has been a real aid to learn to draw all kinds of things that I've never actually seen before with my eyes. And so I've had to do a lot of learning and investigating, but also really get an understanding how to light and shade just about anything. So it's been an amazing career.
That sounds incredible. But let's talk about you and your journey to becoming who you are today. When did you begin to explore your own sexuality and gender identity when you were growing up?
When I was really little, all of my friends were cis males. I really didn't understand there was a difference between them and I until about second grade. I remember my dad got remarried and we moved into a new house. I started going to a new school, and I think that there must have been some sort of concerted effort on my parents' part to feminize, because I remember this, like all of a sudden my room was pink, all my clothes were pink and purple, even clothes were pink and purple. And I grew up in a pretty strict religious environment, so I was made to wear dresses or skirts. I have long hair, and I really kind of I think went into like a survival mode from about second grade through my sophomore year in high school. At that point, I ended up leaving and going from the Christian school, private Christian school that I was going to, and transferred to public high school for the last 2 years of high school. And, really a lot of catching up on just kind of everything at that point. And for the next few years, just starting to understand the broader part. And found out I was gay when I in the last part of my high school, and it was really exciting. And I was, as soon as I figured that out, everything kind of made sense to me in a way that it hadn't. And then, about 10 years after that is when I actually started exploring my own gender identity. So my arc of coming out has been kind of long. But
I think it is for most people, though, right? I know a lot of people that have been on similar paths, right, where they explore that sexuality inside of them first before they are able to really dive into that deeper gender identity and gender presentation part of themselves. Yeah. I feel like that is a fairly common scenario out there. So when you were starting to explore that, were you in a relationship at that point in time, or between relationships?
Yeah, I was kind of between relationships and just meeting and starting to date my now wife. But I had been kind of exploring that a year probably prior to meeting her. And, my own journey about, my own transness, I feel like, my own crazy, like all of us, like there really isn't like one set story for any of us. We all have really vast experiences, and that's partly why I do the work that I do, is that I'm fascinating personal journey. I started HRT and ended up having to go off of that to be cancer treatment that I'm on, and I have to be on that for 10 years. So almost all the changes that I got to, see, really appreciating about it, have all actually kind of, aside from some facial hair, have all kind of gone away now that I've been for about 3.5 years now. So, I embrace a non-binary identity. I use he, him pronouns, but I also welcome they, them, and she, her. And, my story is complex. What can I say? As are many of our journeys, I think,
They are. But that's incredible, though, that you've had to actually stop HRT for that cancer treatment. How did you come to terms with that?
I will say that I don't know if you're an astrology person, but I have like 6 planets. Libra. Really, I've always been about like balance, and I do feel like there is, a feminine side to me that I also feel like my journey and the 30 some odd years that I spent in a body that was perceived female has really informed my life. And so that's something that I embrace. And it's this journey of mine. I've just kind of came to this realization that, this is my journey, even though I would like to be on HRT. And that's part of my journey. That's part of my story. And I could, go and do a lot more surgery and put myself in a little bit higher risk for recurrence. But not to do that. I've chosen to just kind of accept this place that I'm in with my body. And I feel like I have the strength after having gone through cancer. I don't know that I would have had the strength to do that this whole experience, because I have a pretty, what I call radical self-love, which is like, my body's awesome. It got me through. I am and hate to my body. So that gives me this groundedness that I certainly didn't have before kind of having this life or death phase me. But I love myself, and I'm just every day, accepting and loving myself, pretty much. So
I think that's so wonderful. Radical self-love. I actually talked about that a little bit in my post today on Instagram. It's something that's severely lacking in so many people in the community. It's difficult to come to terms with that and to really love yourself for who you are, regardless of the things you can't change, the things you can't control. A cancer diagnosis is a very big thing that you can't control in the moment. You have to roll with that. You have to accept it. And we live our lives, and we don't just live, we thrive. And I think that's really beautiful, Rae. Thank you for sharing that part of your story.
Yeah,
and
I
on
think
top
it's
of
an
that,
important part.
It's not just you, though, right? You do have a partner,
Mm-hmm.
and you also have a child together. So how has that been being a parent? How has that impacted your life? I'm curious, as a parent asking another parent.
Well, our kiddo is, he's now 2 years old, and he's just one of the light life. He's amazing. I love in this little kiddo, and all kinds of things about myself along the way. I think parenting is, a learning process every single day. I live in a really, really trans-friendly city. I live in Portland, Oregon. And so my experience being a parent has been really easy, smooth, and I haven't received any outward backlash or anything like that, as I might in a different community. So, my experience, I've just been able to enjoy parenting, and it's phenomenal. So
Yeah, we take the good and the bad, but I'm so glad to hear it's been a positive experience for you, and hopefully they're letting you sleep at night.
He is just starting to sleep, so.
Okay, good. That's the big one, right? Once they finally start sleeping through the night, then life gets a little bit better for everybody in the house. Yeah. So thank you for sharing that part of your story. I think that's really important to talk through. I think there's a lot of people out there that are going to be able to relate with your journey to get to that point in your life where, transitioning was what you needed to do to be happy and to be you. I know for me personally, I didn't question my sexuality, but I struggled with the fact that representation of trans women in media at the time were almost exclusively shown in heteronormative type relationships. And I struggle with the fact that, well, I love women, but I don't see trans women in those type of relationships. It wasn't until I was much older that I was even aware that was an option. Mm-hmm. But my own struggle there through coming to terms with being trans took me the better part of 30 years. We all have journeys to get to where we end up.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. I did want to talk about your Transcend series, which is just incredible. Again, I hope we can throw some pictures up here while we're talking a little bit. Here we go. And why don't you give us a little bit of background, because everyone who's listening may not know who you're featuring in this series. So I'll throw it over to you.
So the Transcend series focuses on trans and non-binary people really all over the world who I have met and introduced myself through Instagram. They're all people who have been, telling their stories in one way or another, whether they're, poets and speakers or modern dancers or photographers or fashion designers. I mean, they're all activists, athletes. They're from kind of all walks of life. There are people who are really putting themselves out there on social media. And I have made sure to get from each one of them before including them in this series because really specific. And I wanted to make sure that these people wanted to be a part of that. So not everyone I've approached has said yes. But most of them have, and I've actually gotten to meet a bunch of the folks painted now after having painted them, which is really exciting. I do use only rainbow colors for the and then all clothing is depicted in black, just to kind of focus on the human, be as distracted by clothing. And then they all have a blue sky background, and this is symbolism. I feel like trans people are constantly told not to take up any space, with the bathroom bills and all the different messages that society says, basically we ourselves. And so the blue sky background is just a taking a reclaiming of space.
So we talked about what drew you to your subject. What was the original spark that led you to kick off this project?
So I started painting again after recovering cancer surgery. I had been focused really clearly on commercial art for about 10 years, and had taught myself as a fine artist, but really hadn't been doing anything. And then cancer came along and prompted me to basically make a pact with myself that I was going to spend at least 10 minutes a day in my painting. And a lot of times that 10 minutes turns into 30 minutes or a couple hours because it kind of generates energy once I get out here and start painting. But that was an important for me. And I really didn't know what to make art about. Started with what was in front of me. At that point, it was some abstract works. And then I got hired to do a mural of Portland Community College, their QRC. And I ended up painting 6 LGBTQ leaders, and I did them and really loved it. I posted them on social media and had a reaction from people that I had never experienced before. People really responded to it. And so that inspired me to keep going after the mural was done. And instead of having, the kind of LGBTQIA umbrella, I wanted to narrow to just painting trans and non-binary folks. And really what my big is that I don't sort of painted portraiture of this community, and I see a lack of that in the world. And so that's a hole that I'm fill in some way. And I know there are other painters out there who are also doing this work, but there aren't all that many of us, to tell you the truth. So that is partly what drives that. I want to help create representation where I see a lack of it. And specifically focusing on this community, I'm a part of this community, but just, in all the people that I follow and the people that I talk to and friends of mine, people who you see from the outside who might look like they've had the same experience might have had radically different experience. And like I said, I find that really interesting, and I find it really beautiful, and I want to celebrate that and kind of help getting into the world too, and having people, not only our community, be able to see representations of ourselves, but a broader public, to meet these people the way that I've painted them. I feel like when you are, they're all large. They're mostly about 5 feet tall. And there's a humanity that just, comes across in the painting in such a way that it's like the only real storytelling that I do best. Getting this stuff out there has become a passion for me, and something I really enjoy, but also something that I'm kind of do.
I think you touched on a couple really important things there. I don't know anyone else who's doing the type of work you're doing to recognize and showcase the trans and gender nonconforming communities. It's something that is severely lacking, and honestly, trans representation in the arts in general is lacking, and we see that not just in arts like the fields that you're in murals and paintings, but also in television and movies. And there's a whole conversation, I think, that's happening right now in the country and in the world around just that, and making sure that we are seeing that representation. And I think the work that you're doing now is just an incredible push to get those, to close that gap. And you touched on when your audiences, when you're out showcasing, your audience is largely cis, and that's just that's how the world is, right? There's a very small percentage of us that are actually transgender. But what are some of the difficulties you face when you're actually traveling with your art and interacting with some of the patrons that are visiting galleries where it's being presented?
I have to tell you, I have had really incredible receptions, all the places that I've taken this thus far. Whether they've, I've had a reception right in the heart of the Castro in San Francisco during Pride Month. It was an amazing reception. Obviously, largely, reception. But I've also, been in some smaller places, some more conservative places, and had really quite a turnout of people, and people really engaging and interested in the work and interested in talking to me. I've got of speaking events as I've been traveling, and once somebody has already gone around and looked at the work and then maybe hear me talk, I've actually just had really wonderful conversations with people. I've had some really good Q&As afterwards with people, want to kind of figure some stuff out. People ask questions. Obviously, I've had a lot of parents of trans youth come up to me and say, I think it was, it's a real for them to see someone who's an adult, who's like in a career and pursuing their art. So I've actually really largely had pretty wonderful interactions with the public. And they've been really different when I'm with people who are queer and getting to see these representations of themselves. That is really often very emotional. And then, to the cisgender folks who come, a lot of them are pretty open and curious. I can say I've been very pleasantly surprised by my interactions with people. People seem to be open and interested.
You talked about the emotional reaction from people in the queer community, and I'm immediately drawn to the reactions of people in the First Time I Saw Me project, where, and this is your project with Netflix and GLAAD, and you had this opportunity to speed paint some of these very important, influential individuals in the trans community, while they shared their stories about coming out and seeing themselves for the first time as who they always were. And just the reactions when those paintings are revealed to them is incredibly moving. I'd love to hear about your experiences there.
Yeah, that was a really fun project. It happened really fast. Netflix reached out to me, and I was there a week later doing this. So we had to do some negotiation. I had to figure out whether to even paint that fast, because the works that I typically take, a month or more to create, and they wanted me to do this in 30 minutes, 40 minutes. But I ended up, finding myself in a place where I really had to just change my instincts as I was painting. It was a little nerve-wracking whenever they did open those curtains, because I was still painting most of the time and thinking, use 5 more minutes. But it's that letting go. It's like putting it out there and then letting it go. And it was actually a really beautiful experience. Every single one of the people that I painted was incredible and graceful, as they kind of absorbed the surprise of what was happening. But it was a really fun project, and I'm pretty honored to have been a part of it.
It's absolutely beautiful. And for people watching out there, the name of the project is First Time I Saw Me, and you can check out those clips on YouTube. It's really very beautiful. So we're almost to the end of my questions here. The last one I wanted to hit on was, what's on your schedule here in 2019? Where are you traveling? What are you looking like here?
2019 is shaping gonna be an awesome year, but my wife and I are probably moving halfway. So there's kind of a gap in my travel after a certain point. But for this spring, I am taking the works to Carolina in March, and then to Georgia in April. And then it's going to be up in Stonewall, Columbus, Ohio, a month during May. And I'll be, I think, at the Pride celebration there in June. I am, my has honestly slowed a little bit with all the travel that doing in the last year, but I'm still continuing to add to the show. And my goal ultimately is to take these works to all 50 states. I went in states last year, and I'm going to go to at least 3 or 4 this year. But yeah, stay tuned to my Instagram. I'll post as soon as I know more about my schedule this year. But I am trying to get these works out as far and wide as I can, because I think it does have an impact on community and on the community at large.
Now, Rae, do you know where your paintings ended up from the Netflix special? We've actually got some photos here for you.
That's
awesome. Yeah, so Addis had somebody on the inside here, and awesome. Someone who works at Netflix was able to get us these photos of your works up in Netflix headquarters there in San Francisco.
That's awesome. Yeah, I had one of the producers sent me a video of these a while back, and I neglected to save it on my Instagram message, and so
oh no,
this is nice. You guys will have to send me these photos.
We'll get you the
these
photos.
Are great. Yeah.
All right. With that, I do want to turn our attention to questions submitted from our audience, and these are questions submitted through Instagram over the last week or so. So with that, I'll have Addison pull up the first question. How can cis people be better allies? We touched on this a little bit already, but yeah, I'll let you go with it here.
One of the big questions that I get, and that I think cis people maybe misunderstand is how do I know what to call someone? And I think a lot of cisgender people are uncomfortable with this idea of asking someone their pronouns, something that the LGBTQ community has kind of gotten used to. And it can feel really uncomfortable to ask someone that. But the most respectful thing that you can is to ask someone, because you're showing them that you do care and that you're not just making an assumption about. If you are, if you're in that position, like deer in the headlights, just go ahead and ask someone, or use their first name and don't use a pronoun. It's one of the bigger sticking points for people, is that it can be a hurdle to get over, but it's something that I think would be appreciated by most of the trans and non-binary folks that you come into contact with. I don't know if you have more to add, Samantha, but
no, I think that's a great start there. For me, the big one is always for my cis allies. I expect them to be an ally all the time, not just a part-time ally, not just when I'm in the room. If I'm not in the room, or if there's not a trans person in the room and somebody says something transphobic or hurtful, I expect those people to stand up and say, hey, that's not right. And always be on and vigilant in situations like that. Those are wins for me, right? Where it's not just my presence that makes somebody think they need to be on their best behavior. It's the showing that, no, they are really engaged and aware of how hurtful some things can be, and that they're working to help people understand even when I'm not in the room. I think that's great when I hear examples like that.
Absolutely. You're absolutely right.
Next question here. Any tips on how to come out? Ooh, it's a heavy question.
Yeah. I would say, take your time, people that you know and trust first, and then work your way up to the people who you might be a little bit more about. Just make sure you've got some support in your corner. And, it's a freeing thing to do, to come and to be honest with people, but you also have to make sure that, you are safe and that you're supported. So just don't rush yourself. Do it at the right time.
Yeah, I don't think I can add too much more than that. It's about being on your schedule and making sure you're safe more than anything. There's no need to rush. There's no hurry. You've got the rest of your life to look forward to. But Rae, I think you said it perfectly. Having that small support structure is going to be huge as you start rolling out your story to the larger audience there. So yeah, great answer. All right. The hardest part of your transition. Just one? Just one hard part? Honestly, for me, I'll start, I guess. I think the hardest part for me was when I finally started presenting in public as Samantha for the first time, or those first couple times. And knowing who you are and coming to terms with that is so important. And even that's hard in its own right. But the first time you actually dress and you go out in public expecting to be called the name that you want to hear and addressed by the correct pronouns was really nerve-wracking for me. And I can really remember in those early days, multiple times where I would drive somewhere to go out, like a mall or to the movies or something like that, and just be in my car hyperventilating before getting out, because I had to really psych myself up for it. It was really nerve-wracking in those early days. The good news is, in those situations, every time you push through and get out of the car and walk out into public, every time you do it, it gets easier and easier. And then one day you look back and you say, oh, I can't remember the last time where I was worried about going out in public. And now for me, about 2 years into full time, it almost seems like a weird dream or nightmare than reality. It's something that takes time to get to build that confidence as yourself. But every time you try and get out there, it helps.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yep. I can relate that. I also, for me, like I said, my journey's kind of, up and down and over and around. So one of the more challenging things is having the physios that I wanted to see, having those happen and then watching them kind of slowly go back over the last 2 years has been hard. I'm not gonna lie, but I do, I've had others reach out to me and say, I've got this medical condition or that medical condition, or I know who I am and I go on HRT. And it's helping me understand and come to a greater understanding every day that our journeys really are wide varied, and some of us, can transition in all the ways that we want to, and some of us for all kinds of reasons, whether it be money or medical conditions, or maybe just not wanting to do that, and to just exist in the body that you have, knowing who you are. So the hardest things about transition really I think is a place of knowing who you are and walking in the world with that truth in your heart, and just that I think is once you have that, then anything anybody else throws at you doesn't really matter as much, right? As long as you find that kind of core of existence, which is, bring this to all of the speaking events that I've done. I have a typography piece that says that you are beautiful, you are whole, and you are sacred just as you are. And I think this is a message that cisgender people need to hear as well, but I really think that it's a message all of us trans and non-binary folks can, really integrate into this, that you get today, right now, in the moment, and might be changing your body in some way, or you might not be. But whatever you're doing, even if you're changing your body just by growing older, you yourself, and having that will help you get through hardships you're going to face.
All right, next question. How do I build confidence to present as myself? I kind of touched on that a little bit already, didn't I? Yeah, I think it's a really gradual thing to build that confidence, and it's something that happens over time. And to steal from what Rae said, build that confidence with your core group of allies, right? Whether they're your friends, your family. Those first times you go out in public, surround yourself with other people that are on your side. Have your posse there with you, and that will go a long way. And one thing I always recommend for people too is, if you have the resources to reach out to any local trans support organizations, do so and get to know some of those people in your area. There's no guarantee that you're going to, be best friends with everyone there, but these are people that are on a similar journey as you, and there's definitely opportunity to, at the very least, learn from them and maybe build some of those friendships and relationships as well. And I think those are really important from a confidence building standpoint as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I honestly was going to say some similar things about just, getting I think that there are some support groups around, and I think that's good, just because you do get to hear other people's stories that are maybe similar, and you get to just also accept each other wherever you are, and that's good to have those people who really see you and be who you are as you're starting to show up in the world and be more courageous. So I'm just going to reiterate what Samantha said there.
All right. A question for you, Rae. What challenges have you faced in finding an audience as a trans artist?
I definitely have out these to all kinds of art calls. I've gotten predominantly a bunch of no's back. I think that, part of that is, the work that I'm doing is really specific, and I think I've gotten a lot of people either not get back to me or just send me a no, or if they do send me some sort of explanation and tell me, that it's just not quite right for what they're looking for. And so going to happen no matter what kind of an artist you are. I mean, I think being an artist, you gotta just get out there, put it out there, keep putting it out there until it does find audience. And I knew that this was something I wanted out there, and arguably it took me a while of just putting my and getting a lot of, and then spending a lot of time last year on a learning curve, figuring out how to do this by myself. So I have had a lot of support, and it's also been a lot of just trial and knowing that I was going to do this even if it was hard, and just kind of putting one foot in front of the other, really. Yeah.
Fight for it, right?
Yep.
Which artists do you draw inspiration from?
Oh, so many. Yeah, I have really what artists like Hindi Wiley and Amy Sherald and Harmonio Rosales and Titus Kaffer. They're all people who have representation in the art world and are literally feeling. And I see that same lack of representation of the trans and gender non-conforming people, and that is partly I'm trying to mold myself after those artists who are doing that, who have broken into the museum world and who are really adding to the conversation. And I have a whole slew of other fine artists that I've drawn inspiration from. If Egon Schiele is one of them, Keith Haring. There's a whole Shepard Fairey. There's a whole lot of people. There's a lot of typography artists that I follow. I follow a lot of museums and a lot of curators and a lot of other artists on Instagram. I think Instagram is actually to discover and explore other artists. I find people every day that I'm inspired by.
Yeah, there's definitely some great artists on Instagram that I've found in the community. I hope that maybe we'll get a chance to talk to them in the future as well. But I think you're right. It's a great way to get your art out there and showcase it. Mm-hmm. I think that was the last question that was submitted through Instagram. So I'll talk to Addison here really quick and see if we had any questions through YouTube.
We did have 2 questions. The first question was where that mask came from. This is it. Paula, I will send you the link for this later. The second question, second question was for Rae. Rae, do you think that transitioning female to male was more accepted by the, by the general public?
Oh yeah. I mean, I look at my experience as one of the easiest, experiences if you're in this community. I'm white, middle class. I came out when I had a job that supported me and in a town that's very trans friendly. And I am masculine of center. And so it doesn't push back as much on people who are masculine of center the way that they do the people who are feminine of center. So people who are non-binary feminine, who are trans women, I think get far more pushback from society at large than someone my experience does. And I recognize that, and it's partly, part of the work that I'm doing when I'm getting out there and traveling and speaking about this, but it's also part of the work that I'm doing and I'm choosing to paint and feature because I think that those experiences are really different.
We did have one other question, if I can squeeze it in. This is from Erica.
Sure.
Erica asks, do you do commissioned work?
I get asked that question a lot. And am pretty booked and pretty backed up. I do accept commissions every once in a while. They're closed right now on my site, but I do open commissions about once or twice a year. So if you're interested in that, you can go to my website at transpainter.com and there's a commissions drop down. can basically give me your email address and I'll let you know as soon as I do open it. And I open it as often as I can. I just don't have a whole lot of time to get to the painting that I have to do. So.
And that was it for questions. Back to you, Samantha.
All right, great. Thanks, Edison. And Rae, this has been a really insightful conversation for me. I'm so glad that we had a chance to sit down here and talk. I, again, am just absolutely blown away with your artwork. I hope I get the chance to see it on tour. So don't forget to stop by Phoenix at some point. And then we can grab some coffee as well. But I think your visibility in the community is amazing. And I'm really excited to see where you go from here. I hope you continue to explore this topic, and I think it's a wonderful thing. So thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This is awesome to have this conversation. So,
absolutely. All right, stick on the line there, Rae, really quick. I did want to talk quickly here about our next episode, which is going to be airing next week. And this is a very important episode for all of us in the trans community. We're going to be featuring Sergeant Zane Alvarez of the U.S. Army. He's one of our thousands of transgender troops who are currently serving. We're going to talk to him about his career, his experiences about coming out as transgender while on active duty, and his thoughts about the latest news that's come out of Washington this week. I think it's a monumentally important conversation to have, and I'm so excited to have him on next week. He's a fantastic individual, and I think he's going to bring a really good perspective to all the things that have been in the news over the last couple of days here, and I think it's very timely. So I'm very, very excited. Please check that episode out next week. We'll get some questions, the question box up on Instagram here probably by tomorrow morning. So if you have questions for Sergeant Alvarez, please look for that in the Facebook or Instagram story on TransIRL, and please submit those questions. We're expecting a lot of questions, and it's just going to be a fantastic conversation with Sergeant Alvarez. With that, we'll bring everyone back on here for a moment. How do we do, Addison?
Oh, we did good. Lots of people in the chat today.
Good. Excited to hear that. Rae, I'm glad you had a chance to plug your website there as well. I think that's important. People can check out your art and see your schedule on there as well. So wonderful to have people check that out.
Thank you.
All right. Well, appreciate everyone tuning in this week. Again, this is a labor of love here. We're here for you. So excited to share another fantastic story. Rae, thank you once again for your time here tonight. Addison, thank you for doing all your work in the background. And we will see everyone next week. Thanks.